Are you afraid to become who you are? What if I told you that the greatest challenge you'll ever face isn't external? It's not the obstacles life throws at you, the expectations of others, or the fear of failure. No, the greatest challenge you'll ever face is becoming who you truly are. And the most terrifying question isn't, what will others think of me, but, am I brave enough to live as the person I know I'm meant to be? This is the question Friedrich Nietzsche posed to all of us. He believed that most people live their entire lives running away from their true selves, hiding behind masks of conformity, shame, and fear. And if that doesn't make you stop and think, let me ask you this: are you doing the same thing right now? Nietzsche's philosophy is both liberating and terrifying. He knew that embracing your true self, what he called becoming who you are, is one of the hardest things you can do. Why? Because it requires you to confront everything that holds you back: your insecurities, your guilt, your desire to fit in, and your fear of rejection. It demands that you strip away the layers of pretense and face the raw, unfiltered reality of who you are. And let's be real, that's scary. It's much easier to conform, to play it safe, to follow the scripts others have written for you. But Nietzsche also knew that playing it safe comes at a price: the death of your potential, the slow erosion of your spirit. Think about it for a moment. How many of your choices are shaped by what other people expect of you? How often do you silence your own desires because you're afraid of being judged? Nietzsche called this the herd mentality, the tendency to follow the crowd, to seek comfort in sameness, to avoid standing out. And while the herd offers safety, it also stifles individuality. It keeps you from asking the big questions: who am I? What do I want? What am I capable of? Nietzsche believed that most people never even ask these questions because they're too busy trying to fit in. But here's the truth: you can't find yourself in the crowd. You can only find yourself by stepping outside of it. But stepping outside the herd isn't easy. It requires courage, the kind of courage Nietzsche called the will to power. Now, let's clear something up. When Nietzsche talked about the will to power, he wasn't talking about domination or control over others. He was talking about the inner drive to grow, to create, to push beyond your limits. It's the power to overcome your fears, your doubts, and your shame. It's the power to say, this is who I am, and I refuse to live as anything less.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Here's where things get interesting. Nietzsche didn't believe that becoming who you are is about discovering some pre-existing essence, like peeling back layers of an onion to reveal a core. No, he saw it as a creative act. You don't find yourself, you create yourself. You take the raw material of your experiences, your struggles, and your desires, and you shape it into something uniquely your own. And here's the kicker: this process never ends. You're always becoming. You're always growing, evolving, and redefining who you are. But let me ask you this: what's stopping you? What's keeping you from stepping into who you're meant to be? Is it fear of failure? Fear of judgment? Or maybe it's shame, the kind of shame that whispers, you're not good enough. You don't deserve to live as your true self. Nietzsche understood this struggle. He knew that shame and fear are the chains that keep us locked in the herd. But he also knew that these chains can be broken. The key is to face them head on, to confront the parts of yourself you're afraid to look at. Because only by facing your fears can you overcome them. In the next part, we'll explore what it actually means to confront yourself. Nietzsche believed that self-confrontation is the path to freedom, but it's not for the faint of heart. It requires brutal honesty, radical self-acceptance, and a willingness to embrace the chaos within you. But if you're willing to take that step, you might just discover the power to become the person you've always been afraid to be. The mirror of truth, confronting yourself without turning away so you're ready to face yourself. But let me warn you, this is not a comfortable process. Nietzsche called it a reckoning, a confrontation with your deepest truths, and it's not for the faint of heart. Why? Because it requires you to look in the mirror, not the physical one, but the mirror of your soul. And here's the hard part: when you look into that mirror, you're going to see things you don't like. You'll see your fears, your failures, your flaws. You'll see the compromises you've made, the opportunities you've let slip away, and the ways you've betrayed yourself to fit into a world that doesn't always value authenticity. But here's the paradox: it's only by looking at these things, by truly seeing them, that you can begin to let them go. Nietzsche believed that self-confrontation is the first step toward freedom. He wrote, "You must become your own master and your own judge." That means taking responsibility for who you are, not just the parts you're proud of, but the parts you'd rather ignore. It means asking yourself the hard questions: why am I holding myself back? What am I afraid of? And perhaps most importantly, am I living a life that's truly my own, or am I living for someone else? Let's pause for a moment. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you truly sat with yourself, without distractions, and asked, who am I, really? Not who you're supposed to be, not who others want you to be, not the image you project on social media or the mask you wear at work, but the real you, the messy, complex, vulnerable you. If you've never done this, you're not alone. Most of us spend our lives avoiding this kind of self-reflection because it's uncomfortable. But Nietzsche would argue that avoiding it is far more dangerous. When you blind yourself to your own truths, you become a stranger in your own life. You lose the ability to grow, to evolve, to create something meaningful out of your existence. But how do we begin this process of self-confrontation? Nietzsche offers us a clue in his concept of amor fati, which means love of fate. This is the radical idea that you must learn to love every part of your life, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's about accepting everything that's brought you to this moment, even the pain, even the mistakes. Because here's the thing: you can't change the past, but you can choose how you respond to it. You can let it define you, or you can let it fuel your transformation. Nietzsche believed that the strongest people are those who face their struggles with open arms, who say, "This is my life, and I wouldn't trade it for anything because it's mine." But loving your fate doesn't mean resigning yourself to it. It doesn't mean saying, "This is who I am, and I'll never change." Quite the opposite. It means embracing your past so you can build your future. It means looking at your life as a canvas with all its imperfections and asking, what can I create with this? Nietzsche believed that every challenge, every failure, every moment of doubt is an opportunity to grow into something greater. And this growth begins with honesty, with the courage to see yourself as you are, without illusions. But let's not sugarcoat this. Confronting yourself can feel like standing in the eye of a storm. You might feel overwhelmed, even lost. And that's okay. Nietzsche would remind us that chaos is not something to fear, it's something to embrace. He famously said, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." Chaos is the raw material of creation. It's the energy that fuels transformation. So, if you feel like your life is messy, if you feel like you're struggling to find your way, take heart. That chaos is where your power lies. But here's the catch: confronting yourself isn't a one-time thing. It's a lifelong process. You don't just look in the mirror once and say, "Okay, I'm done." You keep looking. You keep asking questions. You keep peeling back the layers, even when it hurts. Because every time you do, you get closer to the truth of who you are. And with that truth comes freedom, the freedom to live a life that's truly your own. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into what it means to create yourself. Nietzsche believed that life is not something that happens to you, it's something you shape with your actions, your choices, and your will. But how do you take control of that process? How do you move from self-confrontation to self-creation? The answer might just surprise you. The art of becoming shaping yourself through will and creation. Once you've faced yourself, your fears, your flaws, your unrealized potential, the question becomes, what now? Nietzsche believed that life is not something static, not something we merely endure or navigate. Life, he argued, is an art, and you are both the artist and the masterpiece. This is the heart of his philosophy, the idea that we do not simply find ourselves, we become ourselves, we become ourselves. And the process of becoming is not passive. It's an act of creation, one that requires courage, vision, and an unrelenting will to shape your existence into something uniquely your own. But let's pause for a moment. What does it mean to create yourself? It's not about becoming someone else, some idealized version of who you think you should be. It's about taking the raw material of who you already are, your strengths, your weaknesses, your pain, your joy, and forging it into something beautiful. Nietzsche called this personal transformation the act of becoming your Übermensch or overman. The overman isn't some superhuman being, it's the version of you that rises above fear, shame, and mediocrity. It's you that dares to live authentically, even in the face of uncertainty. But how do you start creating yourself? Nietzsche believed that the key lies in your will. Not just any will, the will to power. This isn't about dominating others, it's about mastering yourself. It's the inner drive to overcome obstacles, to push beyond your limitations, to channel your chaos into creation. It's what fuels the decision to try again after failure, to learn from your mistakes, to say, I will not let my circumstances define me, I will define myself. And yet, this process isn't easy. The world constantly tries to pull you back into conformity, into the herd. It offers you distractions, comforts, and excuses to stay the same. Nietzsche warned that the greatest enemy of self-creation is complacency, the temptation to settle for what's familiar, even if it's unfulfilling. So let me ask you, are you settling? Are you staying in situations, relationships, or habits that no longer serve you simply because they're comfortable? If so, Nietzsche would say it's time to break free. Breaking free requires more than just willpower, it requires vision. You must ask yourself, what kind of life do I want to create? What kind of person do I want to become? Nietzsche believed that you can't create yourself without a guiding purpose, what he called your why. This isn't something society hands you, it's something you must discover for yourself. Maybe your why is to create art, to build a family, to help others, to explore the world, or to leave a legacy. Whatever it is, it must be yours, not someone else's dream, not someone else's expectation. But here's the catch, no purpose is perfect. Nietzsche reminds us that life is inherently uncertain, full of chaos and unpredictability. And that's okay. In fact, it's necessary. Creation isn't about finding perfection, it's about embracing the process, the struggle, the constant evolution. It's about understanding that you'll never be a finished product, and that's what makes life exciting. You're always growing, always learning, always becoming. Let me challenge you, what are you creating with your life right now? Are you actively shaping it, or are you letting it shape you? Are you living with intention, or are you drifting? Nietzsche would urge you to take control, to stop blaming your circumstances, to stop waiting for the right time. The right time is now. In the final part, we'll explore how to sustain this process of becoming in a world that constantly tries to pull you back. Nietzsche believed that true freedom isn't just about creating yourself, it's about staying true to that creation, even when life gets hard. So how do you hold on to your vision, your purpose, your will, when the world seems determined to test you? The answer lies in Nietzsche's most profound insight about life and struggle. Dancing with struggle, staying true to yourself in a chaotic world. So, you've confronted yourself. You've begun the process of creating who you are. But now comes the hardest part, staying true to that creation. Nietzsche believed that life is an endless cycle of challenge and change, and the world will not sit idly by while you try to sculpt yourself into something extraordinary. It will test you, distract you, and try to pull you back into old patterns. The question is, will you let it? Or will you rise to meet the struggle, using it to fuel your transformation? Here's the truth Nietzsche understood so well: struggle is not an obstacle to becoming who you are, it's the very condition for it. He believed that life's challenges are not something to avoid or resent, but something to embrace. Why? Because struggle forces you to grow. It sharpens you, strengthens you, and reveals what you're truly capable of. Nietzsche famously said, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," but this isn't just about physical survival. It's about the resilience of your spirit, your ability to face hardship and emerge from it more fully yourself. Let me ask you something. How do you respond to struggle? Do you resist it, wishing it would go away? Do you see it as proof that you're failing, that you're not good enough? Or do you see it as an opportunity? Nietzsche would argue that your attitude towards struggle defines your life. If you see struggle as the enemy, you'll spend your energy running from it, and in doing so, you'll run from yourself. But if you see struggle as a teacher, as a crucible for self-creation, you'll begin to transform it into something meaningful. But how do you do that? How do you embrace struggle without being crushed by it? Nietzsche offers us a powerful metaphor: the tightrope walker. He describes life as a tightrope stretched between who you were and who you're becoming. Every step forward requires balance, focus, and courage. And yes, you might stumble, you might even fall. But Nietzsche insists that the risk is worth it, because the alternative, standing still, clinging to the safety of the past, is not really living. This is where Nietzsche's concept of eternal recurrence becomes so profound. He asks us to imagine living the same life, with all its struggles, over and over for eternity. Would you curse your fate, or would you embrace it with joy? The idea isn't meant to depress you, it's meant to wake you up. If you wouldn't want to live your life on repeat, then something needs to change. You need to start living in a way that makes every moment worth it, even the hard ones. And that means embracing the struggle, not as a curse, but as a gift, a chance to prove to yourself who you really are. But here's the paradox: staying true to yourself doesn't mean staying the same. Nietzsche believed that self-overcoming is a lifelong process. The person you are today is not the person you'll be tomorrow, and that's a good thing. Growth requires change, and change often feels like chaos. But Nietzsche reminds us that chaos is where creation happens. One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. The star, in this case, is you, the person you're becoming. So, how do you stay grounded in the midst of this chaos? Nietzsche would tell you to hold on to your why. Remember why you've chosen this path of self-creation. Remember the vision you have for your life, the person you want to become. And when the world tries to pull you back, when fear, doubt, and struggle threaten to overwhelm you, remind yourself that these challenges are part of the process. They're not there to stop you, they're there to shape you. Let me leave you with a final question. If you were to meet the person you're meant to become, your highest, truest self, what would they say to you? Would they thank you for your courage, for refusing to settle, for daring to live authentically? Or would they ask you why you let fear hold you back? Nietzsche believed that the greatest regret isn't failure, it's not trying. It's living a life that's smaller than what you're capable of. So, are you afraid to become who you are? Or are you ready to embrace the struggle, the chaos, and the beauty of becoming? The choice is yours. But remember this, the world doesn't need more people who conform, who settle, who hide. It needs people who dare to create, who dare to grow, who dare to be themselves. And that, Nietzsche would argue, is the ultimate act of courage and the ultimate gift you can give to yourself and the world.